I was hired on Craigslist to pretend to be someone's boyfriend at a family dinner for $400. 3 months later, I saw her wedding announcement with my face photoshopped into every picture. I found the post around midnight while scrolling through Craigslist gigs because my car payment was due and I was $200 short. The listing said, "Need male actor for family dinner. Must be comfortable with light PDA and convincing backstory. $400 cash for 4 hours." Most people would think it's sketchy, but I'd done stranger jobs before, like being a professional line waiter or a fake mourner at some rich guy's funeral. This seemed easy enough. I texted the number and got a response immediately asking me to meet at a coffee shop the next morning to discuss details. The woman who walked in was maybe 28 with shoulder-length blonde hair and this nervous energy that made her fidget with her phone case while she talked. Her name was Sophia, and she needed a fake boyfriend for her sister's engagement party that weekend. Her entire family had been pressuring her about being single while her younger sister was getting married, and she couldn't take another dinner of passive-aggressive comments about her life choices. Sophia explained that her parents were traditional and judgmental, the kind of people who measured success by relationship status and grandchildren. She'd tried bringing real dates to family events before, but the pressure always scared them off within weeks. This time, she just wanted to get through one dinner without the interrogation and lectures. She said I seemed normal enough from my Craigslist response, and she'd checked my social media to make sure I wasn't a complete psycho. I appreciated the honesty. She pulled out $400 bills from her purse and slid them across the table, telling me half now and half after the dinner if everything went smoothly. I took the money and she spent the next hour drilling me on our fake relationship backstory. We'd been dating for 8 months after meeting at a bookstore. I worked in graphic design, which was actually true. We bonded over a shared love of hiking and terrible horror movies. She had a scar on her left knee from falling off a bike when she was 12, and I needed to remember that because her mom always asked dates if they knew about it as some kind of test. Sophia made me memorize her birthday, her favorite foods, the names of her 2 cats, and approximately 15 other details that felt excessive for a 4-hour gig. But she was paying well, so I took notes on my phone and promised to study them before Saturday. She also warned me that her brother-in-law Daniel was suspicious of everyone and would probably try to trip me up with questions, so I needed to stay consistent with the backstory no matter what. Saturday arrived and I showed up at the restaurant 20 minutes early, wearing the button-down shirt Sophia had requested via text. She was already waiting outside, looking more nervous than she had at the coffee shop. She grabbed my hand the second I walked up, and her palm was sweaty with anxiety. "Just remember," she whispered while we walked toward the entrance, "we're in love, and you think my family is great." The restaurant was one of those expensive places with cloth napkins and waiters who refill your water after every sip. Sophia's family was already seated at a large table near the back. Her parents looked exactly how I'd imagined. Her dad in a suit despite it being Saturday evening, and her mom wearing pearls and too much perfume that I could smell from 6 feet away. Her sister Amanda was sitting next to a guy in an expensive watch, who I assumed was the fiancé Daniel. Everyone turned to look at us when we approached, and I felt Sophia's grip on my hand tighten even more. Her mom stood up first and pulled Sophia into a hug that looked more performative than genuine, then turned to me with this assessing look that made me understand why Sophia had hired someone instead of bringing a real date. "So you're the mystery boyfriend we've been hearing about," her mom said, extending her hand. "I'm Catherine. Sophia's been very secretive about you." I shook her hand and smiled the way I'd practiced in the mirror that morning. "Nice to meet you, Catherine. I'm Liam. Sophia talks about you all the time." That was a complete lie, but it seemed like the right thing to say. We sat down and the interrogation started immediately. Catherine wanted to know where I grew up, what my parents did, where I went to college, what my 5-year plan looked like. Sophia's dad, Gerald, joined in with questions about my job and income and whether I had any debt or legal issues. It felt more like a job interview than a family dinner, and I understood completely why Sophia had paid someone to endure this. I stuck to the backstory we'd created and added small details that made it sound more natural. I mentioned my mom's recipe for pot roast when Catherine asked about my family's traditions. I talked about the camping trip Sophia and I had supposedly taken last summer, describing a real place I'd actually been so the details would sound authentic. Sophia jumped in occasionally to add supporting details or redirect questions when her mom got too invasive. About an hour into dinner, Daniel the fiancé started asking more pointed questions about how Sophia and I met. He wanted specifics about which bookstore and what section we were in and what book I'd been holding when we started talking. I could tell he was testing whether I'd slip up on the story, so I stayed calm and described the fiction section of a bookstore I actually visited regularly. I even mentioned a specific book I'd bought that day and how Sophia had commented on my taste. Daniel seemed satisfied for the moment, but I caught him watching me carefully throughout the rest of dinner, like he was waiting for me to mess up. The dinner dragged on for nearly 4 hours with multiple courses and endless questions. Catherine asked about our plans for marriage and children, which made Sophia visibly uncomfortable. Gerald lectured me about financial responsibility and making sure I could provide for his daughter properly. Amanda barely said anything but kept giving Sophia these smug looks like she'd won some competition by getting engaged first. By the time dessert arrived, I was exhausted from maintaining the performance and ready to collect my remaining $200 and never see these people again. But then, Catherine dropped a bomb that changed everything. She announced that since Sophia had finally found someone serious, they should come to the family beach house next month for a long weekend with everyone. "It'll be so nice to have both my daughters settled down," she said, smiling at me like this was wonderful news. Sophia's face went pale, and she started stammering something about scheduling conflicts, but her mom waved it off and said they'd figure out dates that worked for everyone. After dinner finally ended and we said our goodbyes, Sophia practically dragged me to her car. She was apologizing repeatedly while unlocking the doors, saying she had no idea her mom would do that, and she'd figure out some excuse to get out of the beach house trip. I told her it was fine and just wanted my other $200 so I could go home. She pulled out the money and handed it to me, then asked if I'd be willing to do one more gig if her family pushed the beach house thing. She'd pay $800 for the weekend, all expenses covered. I hesitated because a whole weekend sounded exhausting, but $800 was more than I made in 2 weeks at my actual job. I told her to text me if it came to that and I'd think about it. 3 days later, Sophia texted saying her mom had already booked the beach house for a weekend 3 weeks away and was expecting both of us to be there. She offered $1,000 for the weekend and said she'd cover all my food and drinks plus gas money. I agreed because I needed to replace my laptop and this would cover it completely. She sent me a detailed document with more backstory additions and family details I needed to memorize. This included the full names of extended family members who might be there, inside jokes I should know, and even a timeline of our fake relationship with specific dates for important milestones. The next 2 weeks involved multiple coffee meetings where Sophia quizzed me on the information to make sure I had everything memorized. She also had me pose for photos with her that she posted on social media with captions about date nights and inside jokes. She explained that her family checked her Instagram religiously and the photos needed to exist as proof of our relationship. I felt weird about the photos being public, but she assured me she'd delete them after the beach weekend was over. The beach house weekend arrived and I drove 3 hours to meet Sophia at her apartment before we headed to the coast together. She was more anxious than I'd seen her before, chain-drinking coffee and running through the backstory details one more time. During the drive, she admitted that Daniel had been asking her sister questions about me and seemed suspicious that I'd appeared so suddenly in Sophia's life. She warned me he might try to catch me in a lie during the weekend, so I needed to be extra careful about staying consistent. The beach house was massive with 6 bedrooms and a deck overlooking the ocean. Catherine greeted us at the door with too much enthusiasm and immediately started showing me around like I was a prize her daughter had won. Gerald was already on the deck with Daniel, and they both gave me these evaluating looks when I walked out to say hello. Amanda and her mom disappeared into the kitchen to start preparing dinner, while Sophia and I took our bags upstairs to the room we'd be sharing. That's when Sophia dropped another bomb. "There's only one bed," she said quietly, looking embarrassed. "My mom booked us in the couple's room because she assumes we're sleeping together. I can take the floor if you want." I told her we were both adults and could share a bed without making it weird. She looked relieved and started unpacking her stuff while giving me more warnings about her brother-in-law's suspicious nature. That evening at dinner, Daniel started asking me about my job in more detail. He wanted to know what software I used, what kind of projects I worked on, whether I freelanced or worked for a company. I answered everything honestly since that part of the backstory was based on my real life. But then he asked about a specific design principle that I didn't know, because I actually did more basic graphic work than the advanced stuff he was describing. I stumbled over the answer and saw his eyes narrow slightly, like he'd caught me in something. Sophia jumped in and changed the subject, but the damage was done. I could tell Daniel was going to be watching me even more carefully now. The weekend continued with constant performance. I had to hold Sophia's hand during the beach walk, put my arm around her during family photos, laugh at Gerald's terrible jokes, and compliment Catherine's cooking. Every interaction felt like a test I might fail at any moment. On Saturday night, after everyone had gone to bed, Sophia and I were lying in the dark on opposite sides of the mattress, and she started crying quietly. I asked if she was okay, and she said she felt guilty for putting me through this whole charade. She admitted that her family's judgment had made her feel worthless for years, and hiring someone to play boyfriend was probably rock bottom. I told her I didn't think it was rock bottom, just a creative solution to an impossible situation. She laughed a little through the tears and said she appreciated me being kind about it. Sunday morning, Daniel cornered me on the deck while everyone else was inside making breakfast. He sat down next to me and said very directly that he knew something was off about my relationship with Sophia. He said I seemed like a nice enough guy, but details didn't add up and he could tell Sophia was forcing things. I considered coming clean but decided to stick to the story, telling him that Sophia and I were still figuring things out but cared about each other. He didn't look convinced but dropped it when Catherine called everyone inside for food. The weekend finally ended, and Sophia and I drove back to the city in mostly silence. She handed me an envelope with $1,000 cash and thanked me for getting through it without breaking character. She said her family had texted her multiple times already about how nice I seemed and how happy they were she'd found someone. I told her good luck with whatever came next and figured that was the end of our arrangement. 3 weeks later, I got a text from Sophia asking if I could do one more event. Her sister's wedding was in 2 months and her mom had already added me to the guest list as Sophia's +1. She offered $1,500 for the wedding day, which would be about 8 hours including the ceremony and reception. I agreed because the money was too good to pass up and I'd already invested this much time in the fake relationship. She sent me another updated document with information about extended family members who'd be at the wedding and specific stories I should know about Sophia's childhood that her aunts might reference. We met up twice before the wedding to take more photos for social media and practice our couple behavior so it would look natural in front of 150 guests. The wedding day was exhausting but went smoothly. I smiled for countless photos, danced with Sophia during the reception, and made small talk with relatives who asked about our future plans. Daniel watched me like a hawk through the whole event, but I stuck to the script and didn't give him any ammunition. By the time Sophia and I said goodbye in the parking lot, I was relieved to be done with the whole thing. She paid me the $1,500 and said her family was now completely convinced we were serious, which meant the pressure was finally off her. She thanked me for being professional and said she'd delete all the social media photos over the next few weeks. I drove home thinking about how I'd just made $2,700 from pretending to date someone for a few months, which was bizarre, but had paid 3 months of rent. 2 months after the wedding, I was grabbing coffee near my apartment when I saw a notification pop up on my Facebook. Someone had tagged me in a post. I opened it and my stomach dropped. It was a wedding announcement with a photo of Sophia in a wedding dress standing next to a guy in a tuxedo, and my face had been photoshopped onto his body. The caption read, "Just married. So grateful for this amazing man and our beautiful future together." The post had dozens of comments from people congratulating us, including several from her family members. I immediately tried to message Sophia, but found that she'd blocked me on all social media platforms. I called the number I'd been texting, and it went straight to a disconnected message. I sat there in the coffee shop staring at this wedding photo with my face on someone else's body and tried to figure out what the hell was happening. Over the next few hours, I discovered that Sophia had created an entire fake life around our relationship. There were hundreds of photos posted over the past 6 months showing us at restaurants, parks, and events I'd never attended. My face had been photoshopped into pictures with her family at gatherings I wasn't at. There were posts about moving in together, adopting a dog, getting engaged. She'd built this complete fantasy relationship and presented it as real to everyone she knew. I took screenshots of everything and tried to figure out what to do next. I couldn't just let my face be attached to this woman's fake marriage. I started by commenting on the wedding post saying this wasn't real and she'd used my photos without permission. The comment was deleted within minutes and she blocked me from seeing any of her profiles. I contacted Facebook's support team to report the photos as stolen identity, but their automated system said it would take weeks to review. I tried finding contact information for her family members to warn them this was all fake, but everyone's profiles were locked down. I felt trapped and angry and completely unsure how to fix this situation. That night, I couldn't sleep and spent hours researching what legal options I had. I found a lawyer who specialized in identity theft and image misuse who agreed to a free consultation. During our phone call, she explained that what Sophia did was potentially illegal, depending on whether she was profiting from the fake identity or causing me actual harm. She asked if I'd signed any releases allowing her to use my image, and I said no, just agreed to pose for some photos that were supposed to be temporary. The lawyer said I should send Sophia a cease and desist letter demanding she remove all photos and posts containing my image. If she didn't comply, we could pursue legal action for misappropriation of likeness and emotional distress. The lawyer drafted a letter for $200 and sent it to the last address I had for Sophia's apartment. 2 weeks passed with no response. The wedding photos were still up and people were still commenting congratulations. I filed a police report for identity theft and image misuse, bringing all my screenshots and the contract I'd never signed. The officer took my statement but warned me that cases like this were difficult to prosecute because I had voluntarily posed for the initial photos. He said my best option was probably civil court rather than criminal charges. I hired the lawyer to send a formal demand letter threatening legal action if Sophia didn't remove all content within 7 days. This letter went to both her apartment address and her workplace that I'd found through LinkedIn. On day 6, I got a call from a different lawyer who introduced himself as Sophia's legal representation. He explained that his client had been dealing with serious mental health issues and had created an elaborate fantasy to cope with family pressure. He said she was now in treatment and deeply sorry for using my image without permission. He offered to have her remove all photos and posts immediately if I agreed not to pursue criminal charges or a civil lawsuit. I wanted to make her pay for the stress and violation of using my face for her fake life, but I also just wanted the whole thing to end. I agreed to drop potential legal action if everything was removed within 24 hours, and I received written confirmation that she'd never use my image again. The lawyer sent over a settlement agreement that I had reviewed by my own lawyer before signing. Within 12 hours, all the photos disappeared from social media. Her family members started posting confused comments asking what happened, and Sophia posted a vague statement about ending a relationship and needing privacy. Some people were sympathetic and others seemed suspicious, but at least my face was no longer attached to her fake marriage. The settlement included a $3,000 payment for my legal fees and emotional distress, which barely covered what I'd spent on lawyers but felt like something. I also made her sign an agreement that if my image appeared in any of her content again, she'd owe me $50,000 in damages. The lawyer assured me this was enforceable and would prevent her from pulling this again. 3 months after everything was resolved, I got a message request on Instagram from someone named Daniel. It was Sophia's brother-in-law from the wedding. His message said he'd figured out something was wrong with my relationship with Sophia months ago, but couldn't prove it. He said after the photos disappeared and Sophia posted about a breakup, he'd convinced Amanda that something shady had happened. He apologized for not speaking up sooner and said he hoped I was doing okay after whatever Sophia had put me through. I appreciated the message but didn't respond because I didn't want any connection to that family or situation. I deleted the message and moved on with my life. Looking back, I understand why Sophia felt desperate enough to hire someone to play her boyfriend. Family pressure can make people do extreme things, and I don't think she initially planned to create an entire fake marriage around our arrangement, but somewhere along the way she crossed from hiring someone for a performance into stealing my identity for her fantasy life, and that's where I draw the line. The experience taught me to be much more careful about what I agree to for money, and to always get contracts in writing that specify exactly how my image can be used. I still do odd jobs from Craigslist sometimes when I need extra cash, but now I avoid anything involving personal relationships or family events. I stick to furniture moving, dog walking, and other gigs that don't require me to pretend to be someone I'm not. The $2,700 I made from the original arrangement was good money, but it wasn't worth having my face photoshopped into someone else's wedding photos or spending months dealing with lawyers and identity theft reports. Sometimes the weird jobs that pay well end up costing you more than they're worth, and this was definitely one of those times. I hope Sophia got the help she needed and figured out how to deal with her family's pressure in healthier ways, but I never want to be part of anyone's fake life again. And that's the wrap-up for today. I always try to tuck something useful inside these stories, even if it's small. Hopefully, one line or moment stuck with you. Subscribe so you're ready for the next one.